Welcome to Lawyers Who Care, the video show podcast that highlights attorneys who go above and beyond for their clients. And on each episode, we will meet a new lawyer and they will share stories of when they went beyond legal counsel for the benefit of their client. My name is Andrew Samlin. I'm the principal of Samlin Wealth, a nationally recognized wealth management firm for lawyers, their firms, and their clients. And let's applaud lawyers who care and learn from them. Today, my guest is Bryan Henderson. He is a partner of Guilmette Henderson in Atlanta, Georgia. And Bryan has over a decade of handling complex fraud and civil RICO cases. Welcome, Bryan.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, Bryan, tell us about what brought you to the law.
Oh, boy. My journey to becoming a lawyer really started in college. I had set in my mind that I was going to be a doctor. But while I was in school, one of my professors pressured me to join the mock trial team, said he thought I'd really enjoy it. And I did. I loved it. I competed in mock trial all through college, won a couple national championships with my team, and was hooked from there. Knew that I would go to law school. Spent my time in law school trying to get experience in actual practice. And so I was an intern at the public defender's office in DeKalb County in my second and third year. Tried my first case during my third year. So I've always been kind of addicted to the courtroom and addicted to pursuing challenges when I think that the law is very plain and people just aren't following it. That's kind of my sweet spot.
So of all the different areas that you could choose to practice, what brought you to yours? Obviously the courtroom would be front and center, but there's a lot of areas to go into.
Yeah. So again, it's my sort of my natural problem with authority, I think. When I was a public defender, I started working almost exclusively on gang cases. And the reason for that was that Georgia had a gang statute that was super overbroad. It allowed in all sorts of evidence that I thought just didn't make any sense. And so when I got my first gang case as a public defender, I went to my boss and said, listen, I think there's some real problems here that need to be addressed on a broader strategic level. Doing these case by case isn't going to work. And so I asked to take on all of the gang cases for the office and consolidate them under me. That proved to be super effective. I developed motions practice that was very robust on those cases, and in fact is still the motions packet that's largely used in gang cases. The Young Thug case used a lot of my motions on the defense side recently to argue that, and I consulted with some of the attorneys on that case. But what I found was that there was a real strategic need to have a broad overview of attacking the gang statute. We were ultimately able to do that successfully, get to the Georgia Supreme Court. They agreed with us and struck down that portion of the statute. The legislature responded by making an even worse statute. So we went back and had to do the dance again in front of the Supreme Court, got the statute struck down. That led me to a very strange career move. The district attorney's office was forming a new task force to address gang issues, and they offered me a spot. They said, listen, you've been complaining about how we prosecute gang cases for years now. If you think you can do a better job, come over and prove it. And that's what I did. I knew when I took the job that my biggest obstacle would be that my law enforcement partners wouldn't trust me, right? I just spent years eviscerating these guys on the stand and telling them they're doing everything wrong. And now I'm here to say I'm on their team. So I adopted a unique approach. I decided that I need to be with them in the field, doing the tactical work, prove my commitment, and to understand the job that they did. So that's what I did. I put on a vest and strapped up and went out with them in the field. I led a team of DeKalb County gang detectives, as well as a joint task force with ATF in the field operations. We did a very successful national operation called Operation Trigger Lock. It's still one of ATF's most successful prosecution efforts. We, on the state and federal level, were able to put away about 200 members of different blood sets here in Atlanta. And that got me an offer from DOJ to come to them and do cartel work. So So at a certain point, I'd done enough cartel work. I'd had enough sleepless nights worrying about my agents, and I decided to make the jump to civil. And that really led me to sort of look at how I could use my skill set in civil practice. And my thought was, listen, if I can dismantle a street gang, if I can dismantle an international cartel, I can take apart a business that's not following the rules, or I can take apart an opposing counsel that's being overbearing on my client. Just use the same skill set.
And you had mentioned when we were chatting prior to the starting that you had an interesting client story that you wanted to share.
Yeah, I think one of the things that makes our firm unique, and one of the reasons that we've been successful, is that we really do take cases that other people won't. We take cases that push the boundaries and often do what other lawyers maybe think isn't going to be possible. And an example of that is that we had a client. We were representing the organization she was a part of in a civil tax court trial, an underpayment issue. And the IRS started to get really aggressive with our client. They wanted her to attend hearings in person. They wanted her to cooperate. And the attempts just got more and more aggressive, trying to serve her multiple times. Until finally we get a call from the client. She said, someone is in my backyard. He's in plain clothes. He's beating on the door. He's threatened to shoot my dog. I'm scared. I need to know what to do. And had her call the police. The police arrive. Turns out it's an IRS agent who has trespassed onto the property, very clearly past locked gates, gone to the back porch, threatened her. The officer ultimately ends up, escorting him off the property and telling him not to come back. That was sort of the end of it. And she was afraid. She was afraid that nothing would happen, that nothing would move forward. The officer didn't take out charges. And so I had worked at the DOJ and thought, I know how to handle this. The DOJ is very aggressive about making sure its agents follow the rules. And so I wrote letters to the U.S. Attorney's Office saying, hey, this is a problem. You guys need to address it. He needs to be disciplined. Did the same thing with IRS counsel. And the response I got back was shocking. I was told, we don't think he did anything wrong. We're not going to discipline him. We're not going to make any concessions. And in fact, after that, the IRS sent a letter to my client accusing her of threatening the officer and saying she would be prosecuted if she had any further interactions with the officer that were threatening. So really just upped the ante, right? Saying, we'll trespass. We don't care what you think. There's nothing you can do to us. So I reached out again to the U.S. Attorney's Office and said, listen, this is too far. And if you guys continue to move forward in this way, I'm going to take out a warrant against the agent. Georgia is one of the few states that still has the ability for civilians to go directly to a magistrate court judge and apply for a criminal warrant. And that's exactly what we ended up having to do. We had to go to a magistrate court judge in Coweta County. It's a judge, we think this officer's broken the law. The government's not going to hold him accountable. We need you to do that. The hearing was set, and I immediately get a call from DOJ, from actually a former colleague. And I'll never forget what he said. He said, Bryan, I've showed this to people in the office, and they're laughing about this. They can't believe you're even involved. You're not going to get a magistrate judge to arrest an IRS agent. It's laughable, and just wouldn't take it seriously. And I want to be very clear that all we wanted was him disciplined. We wanted something on his record to show that other people knew this was happening. And DOJ refused. Not only did they refuse, but they assigned an assistant United States attorney to go represent him in magistrate court. So our simple trespass and lying to the police case became a huge fight with the DOJ, trying to remove to federal court, trying to deny us document production. We fought the case for a little over 7 months ultimately in magistrate court, which is it was a pretty unusual situation for us, but also for the magistrate judge. But when it came to hearing time, the evidence played out exactly how we knew it would. The officer had trespassed. The officer had lied repeatedly to the police. And in closing, DOJ argued that none of that was a problem. This was an issue for the federal courts. It wasn't for the magistrate courts. This was an issue for internal discipline. We just had to trust them. Nothing bad had happened. And we pushed the issue, and ultimately the judge agreed with us and ordered the arrest of a career IRS agent. I think the thing that sort of sticks with me about that case is that it's a situation where the power dynamics were so off that I think the government really did believe we couldn't do anything to stand up for our client. They really did believe they had power on their side, and there wasn't a procedural mechanism in the law to do anything about it. And I mean, that's to some degree a larger or a microcosm, I guess, of what we do here at the firm, which is push the boundaries, hold people accountable, represent our client to the best of our abilities, no matter what the obstacles in front of us are.
You know, it's interesting because I was just going to ask the question that before we wrap up, if you could leave our listeners with one takeaway, what would that be? I think you might have just answered that in your last paragraph.
I think that's right. Our brand is tough, tactical, and trusted. Tim and I have both had experience out in the field doing the work of, in my case, law enforcement. In his case, he was a commander in special forces. We understand tactics, not just in the courtroom, but outside. And that's really what we apply to our cases. If there's a wall, we'll either go around it, go over top of it, or blow straight through it. We're the guys you come to when someone else tells you your case can't be won, and we'll do our best to win it.
Well, I'd like to thank my guest, Bryan Henderson of Guilmette Henderson in Georgia. Bryan, can you provide our audience with your contact information?
Absolutely. You can find my info at Guilmette, Guilmette, Henderson.com. Or you can just Google Tough, Tactical, Trusted Atlanta, and that'll take you to our website.
Wonderful. This has been the Lawyers Who Care video show podcast that highlights attorneys who go above and beyond, and I think Bryan's a perfect example of that. If you're an attorney or know one who does go above and beyond, feel free to reach out to us, 914-666-6600. Bryan, thanks so much for joining us today.
Andrew, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.